Hi, I'm George Pearson. In this Adobe Lightroom project, we'll be adding in golden hour colors to this photograph. Now, if you like this video, make sure you click that like button and also click on that share button and share this video with your friends on social media. Don't forget to also hit that subscribe button as well. And if you want to learn a lot more about Adobe Lightroom, take a look at my complete training course and you'll find a link right down there in the description. Okay, let's get to it. Here's the original photograph, and as you can see, it's a little low on contrast. There's a bit of a greenish tint you can see on the wall right back in there. And obviously, we're really lacking in the warmths on this. So the things we need to do is we need to push the colors obviously more towards the warmth. We need to sharpen it up just a little bit, get rid of that green cast back in there, and also really push the oranges as well. So several steps. The first thing I always try is just to come over here, right, of course in the develop module, as you can see, and under the basic section right there, just come down and click auto on tone. And that should solve a lot of the problems. That brings back in a lot of our detail in the background, as you can see in here. Some detail showing up in the windows as well. So I brought back in a lot of our details and kind of brighten things up a little bit. So that's a good first start, good place to start from. You can then make adjustments from that as you need to. Let's also go ahead and sharpen this up just a little bit. So we'll scroll down here and come way down towards the bottom, down to detail. And we'll just bring the sharpening up just a little bit, maybe about 9 or so, just a little bit sharper, kind of clean things up a little bit. Okay, we can close that one down now. So we've brought the picture up to a basically good setting. We now can begin to work on the effects for the golden hour coloration. The first thing I want to do is I want to bring the vibrance up of the image, kind of brighten up and make our colors a bit more vibrant. They're a lot stronger in a golden hour image. Let's go ahead and bring up our colors. Again, we'll scroll down just a little bit right down here under presence and come down to vibrance. Now the auto setting already gave us a vibrance of +13, so it has moved that towards more vibrant to begin with. We'll push that a lot further and really bring in a lot more color. See how the color really kind of comes in there? We'll bring this way up. We may adjust this back a little bit, but we'll bring it way up to start and just see how we go. Maybe bring it down just a bit, maybe right about 80, 81 in here somewhere. Okay, you can really now see that green tinge coming into the wall. We'll be adjusting that as we go. But this has helped the skin tones quite a bit. There's still a little bit more pushing towards the warm in here as well. So that's our first step. Now we have all this excess green happening in here. Let's take care of some of this tones. You want to leave our warm tones and kind of tone down the cool tones. So let's come down to the HSL color section. This is hue, saturation, and luminance. Have it on that one. And in here we can adjust the values. We can adjust our hue in here. We can adjust our saturation across our color range and the luminance. What I care about is the saturation. I want to bring down the saturation of those greens and also the blues, since those are both on the cool side. So, and let's scroll down to the second section down here, and that's saturation. So I want to bring the saturation down on the green and also on the blue. So let's go ahead and pull the green down first. There we go, and then pull the blues down as well. Just desaturate the greens and the blues. There's still a lot of color in the background. We'll be adjusting that as we go, but that gets rid of a lot of that excess green around in our background area here and doesn't really affect her colors that much. Make sure those are both all the way to the left. Okay, now let's take a look at the shadows and highlights on our image. We'll scroll back up again, and here's our tone section. You can see in here that the highlights were brought down to -79 by the auto, and the shadows were brought up to +59 again by the auto. I'm just going to push those clear to the limits. There we go. Just kind of help to bring everything closer together. And let's bring our whites up. I'll punch our whites a little bit more in here as well. So the whites are right there. Notice how the whites were already raised by the auto setting. We'll just exaggerate that a little bit further here. I'll take it up to about 45 right there. Okay, we're getting a lot closer now. Now our colors are still off a bit. I want to push our colors a little bit, kind of get rid of and adjust the colors of that background. And just scroll up just a little bit. There we are at the top here. There's our white balance. We need to adjust our white balance just a bit. I'm going to pull the temp away from the yellow. Notice there's too much yellow in that wall back there. And we still have too much green as well. So I'll pull the temp towards the blues just a little bit, maybe about -7 looks good. And that gets rid of most of the yellow on that wall. Let's push our tint now over to a +5. And gets the wall pretty close. There's just a little bit of greenishness up in here, but we're getting pretty close on that. Okay, so at this point, everything is looking just about where I want it, and we can begin to work on the actual coloration, put the warmth now into the image. So for that, let's scroll back down to our color section. And here's our saturations right there. Our main color is going to be orange. So we want to really push the oranges in the image. So let's take the orange and increase our saturation on the orange. You see that really pushes that in. It mostly is happening on the warm tones already. If you watch the building in behind, that doesn't really change much, but we're seeing the warmth come in mostly on the skin tones. So let's just bring this up quite a ways. I'll put it up to about 65, 66, 64. That's pretty good. We've added a lot of warmth now into her skin tone. It's beginning to look like she is lit by a warmer light source. Let's also adjust the luminosity at this point as well. So here's our orange luminosity, and let's bring that up. You can see it just kind of brightens everything up in here. So we'll bring this up to about 42, I think is pretty good. Let's see. There we go, 42. Again, just brightens things up with that orange. Looks like she's beginning to get some of that late day sunlight hitting her in there. Okay, at this point now I have our colors basically set, but the overall picture still needs some work. So let's go ahead and work on that. The first thing I want to do is I want to darken down the outer edges here just a bit. There's too much light outside. We're not really focusing on our foreground subject. We can do that by putting in just a little bit of a vignette around the outside. So let's go ahead and we'll scroll down to the effects section over here. There's the effects, and the top one here is post-crop vignetting, and on the amount, just pull it a little ways to the left. See, that just kind of darkens down those corners. If you go too far, get real dark effect like that, kind of old-fashioned look, but just a little bit. Looks like -29 is pretty good. We're just darkening down the edges in there. Looks like it's getting darker behind her, and she's still being hit by some sunlight, but it's not so much that you're really noticing a vignetting effect. It's kind of right in that range, just before it begins looking like a vignette, but we're still darkening down those outer areas. Now's a good time to tweak our tone curve just a little bit. Let's go ahead and we'll scroll back up. And there's the tone curve. Now there's some little point curve options down here, kind of automatic settings for the whole thing. And I found that just going for a medium contrast helps to bring in a bit of contrast right there, and it's real easy. That means you don't have to be fussing with the lines or anything up here. Just push to medium contrast, and it increases our contrast a bit. Let me just show you that again. There's the linear, that's where you were, and then medium contrast just adds a bit more contrast into the picture. Looks really nice. Let's do a little more tweaking now in our colors, but let's go ahead and work on those separately. Work on our highlights and on our shadow colors separately, and you can do that with split toning. Let's just come down to our split toning section right down here. There we go. Now split toning, this is separated with highlights and shadows. I can do hue and saturation on the highlights and hue saturation on the shadows, allowing us to adjust those independently. So let's take the hue slider here on the highlights side, and I'm going to push this up to just a little bit, just about 30. It's a real small shift in there. There we go. And we'll bring our saturation up just a bit there, up to 6. Okay, so if you can see that hue shift right there, just a little bit more towards the yellows. Okay, so Push up to 30. Same thing now for our shadows. We're going to move our shadows just a little bit. We pull the saturation up here. First on this one up to 7 on the saturation. Get a little bit more color happening in there. Let's now push the hue on this one also just a little bit more towards that orange section. Right there, and that pushes the shadow lighting again just a little bit more towards the orange. So we're able to separate out and work on those independently. Now with all those recent tweaks, we're still getting a bit too much yellow back in there on the wall. We can adjust that, and we can also help to separate our values a bit here, maybe bring our highlights up a bit and our darks down a little bit, giving us a bit more contrast in there. Let's take care of that. We'll scroll back up again to our colors. There's the HSL section and come down to saturation. I want to pull down the yellow saturation. Right now it's just at 0. Let's just pull that over to the left. So as I pull that down, the first thing that goes in here is that background wall. Really begin to lose that yellow tone on the background wall. We lose a little bit of that in the foreground figure, but because of her basic coloration, we don't lose that much. We're mostly seeing this in the background. So I'll bring this down to, it looks like about 56, and we just get that back to white again in the background. So that's looking pretty good. Now if you wanted just a little more, just go ahead and just go just a touch, maybe just a touch, leaving just a little bit of warmth on that wall. So maybe about 40, negative 40 looks pretty good. Just a little bit of warmth in there, but we've taken it away from being too yellow looking. Okay, now let's go ahead and bring up our highlights and our darks. We'll go back to our tone curve. There we go, there's the tone curve. And here we can work on the highlights, lights, darks, and shadows independently. We'll punch the highlights up a bit. It's over to, just about plus 10, plus 9 is good. Just a little more brightness in the highlights, and we'll bring down the darks just a bit. You see there's the darks coming down. And right about there. So that gives us that feeling of it being in the late afternoon in the background now. And we've color adjusted our back, and our foreground now has a nice warm colors as well. Let's now go back and just double check our settings. That's easy to do. I'll go up to the top up here. I'm pretty happy with these tone settings, but we didn't really touch the blacks. Maybe just bring the blacks up just a little bit, I think. Let's see how that looks. Then left just a little bit. Looks like right about in here is a little bit better setting on the blacks. So I've taken the blacks down quite a bit as well. Just helps to darken down the background since all the blacks are back in there. Okay, there's one little tweak on the blacks. We'll scroll down a bit. We're fine on the presence. Again, we're kind of iffy on the vibrance, but I think we're okay on that. I think I'll leave the vibrance as is. Let's double check our tone curves. Little on-off switch. And that's fine. Come on down here. There's all of our colors, and they're all looking just where they should be. All the saturation adjustments and the luminance adjustment in there. And on the split toning, let's double check our split toning. In fact, this is real subtle. But you can see with the split toning, we've helped to remove a lot of that background green in there, and it really kind of brings that towards the warm tones in the background. So that's fine. And of course, we had our sharpening, which is okay. And on the effects, this is the vignette. And that little bit of vignette really helps to pull the whole thing together and give it that kind of late afternoon effect. Let's go ahead now and compare our before and after right there. So there's the before and there's the after, giving it that nice kind of warm tone golden hour effect. Don't forget, if you liked this video, make sure you click that like button, and of course, even more important, share with your friends on social media by clicking on that share button as well. And also, to learn a lot more about using Adobe's Lightroom program, take a look at my complete training course, and you'll find the link for that right down there in the description. Thank you for watching my video. I hope you found it useful. If you like this video, click on the like button below to let others know. You can click the subscribe button so you don't miss any of my videos in the future. I'm frequently uploading new training videos. Don't forget to check out my website at howtogurus.com.